Welcome to the Money Matters Show, where I explore the money topics that matter most to you. I'm your host, Steve Balch. Join me as I share expert insights, actionable strategies, and meaningful conversations to help you protect, grow, and optimize your wealth. Let's dive into what really matters when it comes to your financial future. Welcome to episode 3 of the Money Matters Show. We're going to talk about mortgages and questions about should you pay off your mortgage and what should you do. Common question I get from high net worth individuals or people close to retirement or in retirement is, should I have a mortgage in retirement? And the reality is, it depends on a lot of factors. I personally am not someone that feels having a mortgage is a net detriment for you, especially if you were able to lock in some of these rates under 4%. So I'm an opportunity cost guy, meaning if I have the funds available to pay off my mortgage, yes, there is something I'm going to be able to pay off, but what do I lose potentially in return? So if you have a mortgage at 3.5%, but you can get 5% in the markets, it may make more sense to invest those funds over a long period of time and net the opportunity of the 1.5%, 2% annualized return over a 10, 15, 20-year period, right? If your mortgage is more in the 5 to 7 year range, it may be harder to be able to get that type of hurdle from an investment standpoint. But again, it may make sense to be able to invest and build a nest egg over long periods of time. So today I want to talk about mortgages, a common question if you should pay it off, and why you may want to think about your mortgage a little bit differently, and why it may make sense to continue paying your mortgage while you let that term run out and take the extra funds you're going to use to pay it down or pay it off and invest that for the long term. So let's kind of go over what I mean by an opportunity cost, right? So let's say you have $300,000 left on your mortgage, right? And you have 15 years left and you're paying 4%. And you can invest those funds and get 5%. So at the end of the 15 years, you'll have a house that's paid off for, and in addition, that $300,000 you're going to use to pay off the mortgage, if you invest that to get a 5% return, you would get a nest egg of about $623,000 in the future. So that gives you a paid off house and a lot of flexibility as to what you want to do. You can use those funds to buy a potential second house. You can use it as vacation funds. You can use it to fund your retirement, potentially retire earlier. So I like the ability to keep that $300,000, invest it for the long term, and allow yourself to pay off the mortgage, especially if your rates are under 4%, right? If you're invested, and we're invested in a diversified portfolio, and even a conservative investment over the next handful of years, 10, 15, 20 years, you should be able to see a 5% return and netting you that extra percentage. So yes, you are paying interest on that mortgage loan, but the net opportunity of being able to invest above and beyond what that rate is seems to make sense here, especially in this scenario. Let's say that your mortgage is potentially a little bit higher here. Let's say your mortgage is same thing. Let's go with a $400,000 mortgage, and you've paid a handful of years in, 25 years, and your rate is 25, and your rate is 7%. And you want to pay it down a little bit, and you say, I'm going to put an extra $1,000 in on a monthly basis. Well, you would take off roughly 11 years and almost 11 and a half years and save yourself about $229,000 interest. So that's an interesting standpoint. It's definitely something that can definitely help you out. But let's kind of replay this and say, okay, well, instead of doing the extra payment to my mortgage, let's invest those funds, right? And let's say, okay, I start with 0 and we're looking at 25, and I'm going to put an extra $1,000 in the beginning of every month for the next 25 years. And again, let's say I get 5% here. You would end up with roughly $588,000. And even though you're paying, right, that extra rate here of 7%, you still end up growing that extra $12,000 you put to the mortgage. Yes, helps pay off the interest in a shorter period of time for you, but you also miss out on potentially having that extra nest egg for you, right? So as we think about those scenarios of essentially instead of taking extra funds and paying down your mortgage or paying off your mortgage and investing it, you can see that potentially gives you an extra nest egg into the future. And I'm not talking about 8, 9, 10% returns. We're talking about 5% returns here, $300,000 over a 15-year period invested at a 5% annual return gets you close to $623,000, right? You have a $400,000 mortgage with 25 years left. You're paying 7%. I know that's a high rate, and you want to pay that down and get out of it sooner. But instead of taking that extra $1,000 a month, you take that extra $1,000 instead of putting towards a mortgage, you invest those funds, and that extra $12,000 a year at a 5% interest rate, that grows to roughly $588,000, right? So I view, when I work with individuals, high net worth individuals and retirees, the goal is flexibility, right? And I don't know what life's going to bring. We don't know what's going to happen. People get hurt, jobs change, recessions happen, things adjust. I want to have flexibility to be able to enjoy my life and live it on my terms. And yes, a mortgage would be an issue, but if I invest those funds and I have a 15 years left of my mortgage, and let's say, unfortunately, in 7 years or 10 years, I get laid off, or I have to have a forced early retirement and I can't find another job, well, that money you invested, if you don't want to have a mortgage anymore, you can take part of those funds out and then pay off the mortgage and still have excess above and beyond that, right? So it's all about flexibility. And at the end of the day, as long as your mortgage payment is not crushing your cash flow and it's allowing you to live your day-to-day life, I would use the extra funds that you are going to use to pay off the mortgage, pay down the mortgage, to invest that to enable you to build a nest egg for flexibility in the future. Thank you for watching. If you like this information and want more financial tips about how to build wealth and use your wealth as a high income earner or retiree, like and follow along. The information given here is taken from sources of IFP Advisors LLC, DBA Independent Financial Partners, IFP Securities LLC, DBA Independent Financial Partners, and its advisors are believed to be reliable, but is not guaranteed by us as to the accuracy or completeness. This is for informational purposes only, and in no event should be construed as an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy any securities or products. Please consult your tax and or legal advisor before implementing any tax and or legal related strategies mentioned in this publication, as IFP does not provide tax and or legal advice. Opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investment objectives, financial situations, or needs of individual investors. This report may not be reproduced, distributed, or published by any person for any purpose without IFP's express consent, prior written consent. Investment advice offered through IFP Advisors, LLC, DBA Independent Financial Partners, a registered investment advisor. IFP and Certa Financial Planning are not affiliated.